Let's see. Let's start from the top. So it's a minimal web GUI for coding agents. Currently Codex and Claude. More coming soon. If you really want to contribute still, read this first. Let's see what Julius said. If you want to contribute, we're not actively accepting contributions. You can still open issues or PRs, but know that there's a high chance that we just close it, defer it forever, or never ever look at it. I like this contributing.md. I like this one. If that's annoying, that's because it is. This project is.
It's get better. It get better. It's getting better.
I like this
every line.
contributing.md. This is good. This project is still early and we're trying to keep scope, quality, and direction under control. PRs are automatically okay. What we're most likely to accept is focused bug fixes, reliability fixes, proof improvements. Sure. Okay. So let's see here. What is in the agents file? Sure. So this package roles. I feel like some of this is not necessary. Sorry, Julius. I think almost all of this is unnecessary context. These are not. These are fine. I would argue, if Julius is listening, I doubt he is, but if he is, I would argue this is the only thing that you need in your agents file. Maybe this.
Maybe if I don't know if it has like a folder with reference repositories or something, probably that goes in the CloudMD as well.
Let's see. Apps. No, these are the. It's looking good. Ignore. Mike, it does not look like Julius has adopted your pattern, or at least it's not evident to me.
My pattern being?
Clone the repo locally.
Yep.
As they say, not my problem.
Well, anyway, let's look at some code. Let's look in shared source. I don't know. What's Drainable Worker do? Drainable Worker is a queue-based worker that exposes a drain effect, wraps the common queue unbounded plus effect forever pattern, and adds a signal that resolves when the queue is empty and the current item has finished processing. This lets tests replace timing-sensitive effect on sleep calls with deterministic drain. Okay. It feels like... Okay, wait, let's look at this. Makes a queue. Makes it deferred. Wait.
And immediately complete the defer.
Okay, I'm going to defer judgment for 1 minute. Has a state ref. Add finalizer to shut down the queue, which is fine. State. So we finish one, modifies the state by checking how many outstanding there are. I guess outstanding tasks. And if remaining is 0, returns the idle deferred, otherwise returns null.
Oh, probably he wanted a latch instead of the idle deferred. I don't know. Just
process.
Thank you. Yeah. it seems like a counter outstanding that counts the amount of current pending items, and then idle is just the third that completes when there are no entry outstanding. So probably that would have been like a latch, right?
And
Instead
the
of-
other is kind of rolling.
Yeah. And basically that the third completes only when there are no entries, because we saw before that it completed at the end of the finish one, it completed if it was idle null, right?
Yeah.
This is
But
a good case to use STM actually, because all of this is going to be unsynchronized, and you might have race conditions all over the place.
But if the whole purpose of this is just to drain a queue, or to be able to wait for draining a queue, and this is
Well,
V4.
plus having a signal when the queue gets to 0.
That's the point.
Right.
Which is not easy to do with a normal queue.
Right.
Very easy to do with a transactional queue.
You heard it here first, folks. A good use case for STM right here. Julius, if you're listening, STM.
Yeah, I'd say
right.
STM, as simple as TX queue, and then your idle check simply becomes a size check with a retry, with an STM retry, and it'll automatically give you a signal when the size gets to 0.
Create a PR for it.
We could.
Fair enough.
Could we try T3 code to do the PR? That would be fun.
That would be fun.
Except we use neither codex nor Claude code. So
yeah, I'm an we're all, as far as I'm aware, we're all open code enjoyers, except for Tim, who's currently a Clanka enjoyer. But still uses open code, and no, I think actually he integrated Clanka into Lauf now too. So ticket state idle, and then this just waits, and this idle check would just become your STM retry loop, right? Yeah.
Plus the state could also be a TX ref, so the whole set of changes is transactional.
Maybe we will make a PR. Maybe I'll do that today, and Mike can check my work. You folks can watch in real time. Mike, what is the rule for when you need to take an STM, and when is it correct to what's the word I'm looking for? Hang on, I'll show you. I know this is really tiny. Give me 1 second. Just go back in here. When is it correct to wrap? At what boundary do you do that with your STM?
What's
like
that?
when do you wrap the STM with the transaction signal, or atomically, or whatever it's called? When you create a TX ref, right? This is the effect that creates a TX ref and requires a transaction. If you do this, right, you get your TX ref. How how do you know, like, similar, like, I'm thinking of providing the transaction similar to like scoped, right? Like, so how do I know where? A good question for the audience and also for me is, like, how do you know what the transaction boundary is? Like, what's the rule of thumb there?
There's no real rule of thumb there. It's totally dependent on business logic.
So in this case, like, if we were,
the scope of a transaction is the scope of the retry.
Got it. That makes more sense.
So you basically let it bubble up. It's like database transactions. When do you make a database transaction? Depends.
Right. So
If
in
you
like the
want
case
to,
of in the case of like the T3 code example, if we take that more concretely, dot it would be correct to create the queue and the ref up front as small transactions, and then later on down the road, when you're doing your idle check, you would do like, you know, your whatever, and you'd say, just for the sake of argument, you'd have this, and you'd say like, whatever, if current count is not equal to 0 or whatever. Yeah.
Retry, yeah.
It's an effect. You have to yield it, right?
Retry transaction.
Transaction, yeah.
Yeah, and then otherwise,
You succeed.
And the current count is just the getting the size of the queue.
Mm-mm.
if we get rid of this business here, like this would be the scope of the transaction here, this whole thing. So you would wrap this whole thing.
That is to get the signal, yes.
Yep.
That
Right.
said, if you wanted to compose these into other things, then you would have to extract the inner check.
Right, but
Yeah.
the idea here
Oh.
is that the scope of the thing that you want to retry as part of your like transaction is your boundary for where you mark it as a transaction, like where you provide the transaction, right?
Well, whatever happens inside the transaction is atomic. Whatever happens outside, it's not.
Right.
So if I wanted to do, for example, idle check and do some other operations within the same transaction, this would not be okay.
Got it.
Because you'd have to separate transactions.
Okay.
Unless
well,
we
maybe.
decide that that transaction self-compose. So if you have an above transaction, it automatically retries children transactions, which I'm not sure it's a good. It's kind of an implicit pattern.
Yeah, I kind of like that. It feels the same as scope in some regards here, where like the boundary of you have to decide what the boundary of the transaction is, similar to what like you have to decide what the boundary of a scoped operation is. So there's like some degree of familiarity here. Anyway, maybe I will make a PR and see if I can make this into something that uses STM. Cleans this up a little bit for Julius. What else is in here?
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm in the net module now, and I was just looking at this try reserve port method. So yeah, for this, I thought this was kind of a neat use of callback, but the idea here being that effect.callback allows you to wrap async operations into an effect. So you get like a function that has access to a resume method. So in here, it looks like a server's created. They have a settled callback, and if the server actually settles, then they resume. And once you resume, the callback exits. So if you run an effect.callback and you never call resume, then this effect would never finish unless it's interrupted. Unref the server, then if there's an error, the settle method is called with a failure effect. If listening is successful, it looks like settle is called address. It looks like settles called with the resolved address, I guess. And then effect.callback is also nice because if you have a callback that is currently running and gets interrupted, you kind of might want a way to like clean up stuff that's happening inside the callback. And whatever you return from an effect.callback, it's kind of like I really hate this comparison, but for folks coming from React, it's similar to like a use effect where you can like do stuff and then have a thing that you return at the end that does cleanup. It's similar in spirit here, but this effect that you return at the end would be called if the callback is interrupted. So like if nothing has called resume and this callback is still running and it gets interrupted, then this would get called. And in this case, they're closing the server. So I guess this service is primarily for network operations. Effect equals use effect. Gotcha. We need the Johannes meme on like a one-click binding. The Drake use effect meme that Johannes had created a while back. Net service is a service for startup networking helpers. Is this not the same? I guess not. Can listen on host. So I guess this is like low-level networking, node net wrappers. This is a cool little example of zip width. Is port available on loopback? Can listen on localhost or on the IPv4 loopback and on the IPv6 loopback. And if both are true, then zip width, it gives you the result of both of these and you can do something with them. Cool. It's a nice little service. Would callback only be useful in server side? Would effect.callback be useful in server side events if I'm only expecting a specific event for processing versus just using stream?
I think that they are unrelated, right?
I think callback is most useful for native, like integrating with native JavaScript that is callback based. So if your server side events, however you're listening to them, if it's like, an event emitter or something like that, that is only called once, then sure. But server side events are like typically multi-shot type things. So if effect.callback is a single shot thing, if you're doing something that's multi-shot, stream is probably better. So in streams, because streams are multi-shot, they can integrate nicely with multi-shot event emitters. But I think that there's a callback push. Isn't there like a...
I think they've been unified into the same.
Maybe. Anyway, this is the idea. It's not like a perfect example of this, but like you could use sorry, I was reading all of these new properties on here.
Q is an enqueue, so you have to use the queue methods.
New event, right? You would do something like this. And the idea being here is now this is like a multi-shot situation. Like the stream can keep emitting these events because it has like you would be offering them into a queue under the hood. with effect.callback, it's a single shot resumption. Like it's something that's meant to like wait until some async op is finished, and then you call resume with that value with the effect that you want to resume with. Hopefully that makes sense.
The best.
There's no effect imports in here, so we're gonna just not go in there. Schema JSON. This has only effect imported, so we can look at this module. It doesn't look like there's anything interesting here, though. Yeah, no, nothing interesting. All right, let's get out of shared. Let's go to the apps.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Let's go to the server. Let's look at. I don't know, Mike. Pick a thing.
Checkpointing.
Checkpointing sounds good.
Layers.
Wow.
Oh.
Layers and services. Julius, so organized. Let's look at services. Checkpoint store. The checkpoint store is a repository interface for file system backed workspace checkpoints. Owns hidden git ref checkpoint capture, restore, and diff computation for a workspace thread timeline. It does not store user facing checkpoint metadata and does not coordinate provider conversation rollback. Okay. This is a Sergeant Dokes moment right here. Right here. These 4 lines, Sergeant Dokes. I'm looking at you, Julius.
Motherfucker.
Surprise, motherfucker. It looks like that's just the interface. Let's look at the actual implementation. Okay. So,
and if you don't know who Sergeant Dokes is, you had a bad life. Watch Dexter.
Watch Dexter, and then understand that the meme is related to AI generated code. So make checkpoint store. Looks like it gets some platform services. Git core. This is cool. Let's go look at this real quick. I know I'm like a little ADD at the moment, but let's look at this. I want to see if Julius is using my beautiful new child process module. He is.
It is.
I spent quite a bit of time on this module, so I'm happy. I'm happy that people are getting use out of it. The old command module was not good. Where are we? Create trace to monitor. No, I want to look at the service constructor. Make git core. Spawner. We've got an execute method. Oh, there's a lot of stuff going on here. This is cool. Command spawner.spawn. It makes a child process object with all the stuff it gets from spawn. Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm most happy about is the ability to actually like properly collect output from different streams now, which is kind of nice. It wasn't really possible in an easy manner before. It actually really wasn't possible because of race conditions. This is very cool. This is a very involved Git integration. I like it. All right. Back to the checkpoint store. It looks like it's primarily just using delegating some commands to get checkpoints and other information. I wonder if any of these are also then decoding with schema. Capture checkpoint. Make a temp directory. Isn't there a make temp directory scoped?
There he is.
Unless he's doing something else here. I thought that there was I am switching to another screen, but you don't need to see what I'm doing. Give me 1 sec.
Are they using the file system module from us, or?
Yeah, there is.
I think so, yes. make
there is
temp directory.
a make temp fit. Yeah.
So we could, I mean, it's not like a huge win here, but you could just use make temp directory scoped here and avoid having to do the cleanup yourself here. Like avoid the whole acquire release here, make temp directory scoped and then flat map that directly into this and then wrap it all with effect.scoped. Is there any schema stuff going on? Let me see.
Sure, why you would have it here.
I don't know. I'm just looking at what's going on in here. It's cool though. Like this is a very nicely designed service. A lot of these could probably be converted to effect.fn with span names to get better stack traces and also to integrate with tracing later if that was desired. Like it's a small perf improvement, but it adds up over time to not recreate these generator objects every single time these methods are called. And when you have like lots of them being created all the time like this, as part of calling a function,
like getting telemetry out of the box is also a huge win.
Yeah.
I think like even less than that, getting the stack traces is a huge win. Like being able to see where something was called. I got a lot of PRs to make to T3 code. This is crazy. But according to the contributing.md,
you cannot.
my PRs will not be accepted. All right. One more thing we can look at, and then we'll probably call it. Let's look at persistence. Wow, there's a lot of stuff going on in here. Let's look at projection state, maybe. Is there anything interesting here?
Schema.
Make the repository. This upserts. Making very heavy use of effect SQL, which is cool.
It's like literally going all in on effect.
Yeah, this is probably one of the best examples I've seen of effect v4 being used in production in an open source app. That said, like if you have better examples, send them to me. But like this is high quality code. You can tell that some of it's been generated with AI and still is very high quality. Aside from like a few small things that could be improved with just lint rules or the effect LSP running on checks. But yeah, this is like a very high quality code base from what I've seen so far. I like how Julius specifically said don't open issues or PRs, and there's 337 issues and 234 open PRs.
Because nobody reads contributing.md.
Yeah.
Nobody but me, apparently.
Probably you should have said in the README as a first line, please open PRs and issues.
Please do not contribute.
No, please contribute so people would do the opposite.
Anyway, yeah, high quality code base. Go take a look. Don't contribute. Unless you have something like worthy to contribute, I guess. But yeah, T3 code looks like very high quality code. I'm sure that in open code also there are reasons and rationales why they took the approach that they did. There may be better ways to do things, but it's exciting to see effect getting adopted there as well. I'm sure that over time we'll see more and more effect in that code base. But yeah, this is it's cool to see effect in some of these larger open source projects.